Welcome everybody to another Fireside chat, and it has of course been a few weeks, possibly a few months. We had the fasting month come on, and Huma kindly prompted me to say, Wasim, you really need to get on with this. Bearing in mind that she herself has been taking a break as well, so I can't be totally to blame. So I am with two fantastic ladies. I have my co-host with me, Huma Hamid. Welcome to jumping on LinkedIn again, and we have our special guest with us today, Telle Whitney. Welcome to LinkedIn Live. It's such an honor to have you.
Oh, it's lovely to be here.
Now, I want to quickly go into who Telle is, but Telle, before I do introduce you, I'd love to know what you had for breakfast this morning.
I haven't had breakfast.
Wow. Okay.
So my first meal today is going to be lunch after this call.
That's fantastic. So we better make this conversation so good that you don't get hungry and then you're like, oh, you know what? I need to get off and eat. This is really one of those. So for all of you who don't know, Telle, of course, was CEO and led the Anita Borg Institute from 2002 all the way to September 2017. Now, catch this. This was a non-for-profit that was barely surviving, and it was struggling, and she turned it into a world-recognized leader. They've impacted over 750,000 people globally, and they grew the revenue to nearly $28 million. Telle, how does one go about doing that?
Well, I mean, how do you, in a nutshell, talk about the growth of that kind? But when Anita and I first started the Grace Hopper celebration, I mean, really what it was a passion of mine to be able to connect with other technical women. And that was what drove me. And I've been at a number of startups. So before I joined the Anita Borg Institute, I had been at a few semiconductor startups. And so you just keep showing up. We had a great board of trustees that were very committed. And we talked to the women. I mean, the reason that we grew so much was because of the women. They had this chance to connect with other people that look like them. They had a chance to hear about the technology and the greatness that they could participate in. And it was through their participation and the companies that we were able to grow.
And Telle, one of my mentors, Dr. Oleg Konovlov, he wrote the book called The Vision Code. And something he's always said to me, and something I've always kind of looked at is, especially now, we desperately need leaders of all levels to be armed with understanding of vision as never before. And without this, there can't be long-term progress. And being able to craft an inspiring vision is what makes the difference between a great organization and an organization that just exists. What was your vision? What drove you to do what you did?
Well, for me, what was really important was that women were at the table creating the technology that changes all of our lives. And to see that and to envision that, and for the women to have an impact on the world.
Incredible. And with everything you've achieved and going forward, we're in this stage now where linear growth is something that humans as a species generally are comfortable with, but we're in this very uncomfortable phase whereby we're at this point where we're at this exponential rate of change of growth. And 2020 has had 10 years of transformation come into one. How do you see this next decade panning out for women in technology, and what are the challenges you foresee that they'll have to deal with?
Well, yes, I mean, we don't know the impact of this last year on women. And whereas I was very optimistic at the beginning that women would be able to fully participate, what we've observed is that many women during this last year have left the workplace, which I think is very unfortunate. I do think that there's an opportunity to understand how to engage with all the women who are out there and want to be part of the technology future, but just couldn't figure out how to do it. I mean, I feel passionately today that it is more important than ever that women are at the table creating technology. One of the boards that I'm involved with is something called AI for All. And this is the next generation of AI leadership. And as you both know, AI impacts everything about what we do every day. And that's a great example of how we need a very diverse set of people creating that technology effort, because otherwise, the negative impact on all of us and our children could be profound.
Well, Teddy, I did say to you, we're going to have surprises. So one of those gentlemen has joined, and I want to introduce you to Ralph Simon Huma. So Simon, Ralph, I did tell Teddy that there'll be some surprises for this LinkedIn Lives, and we'll have people coming in. I'm so honored to have all of you here together. Ralph, welcome to the LinkedIn Live.
Thank you very much. Great to speak with you all. And Telle, great to meet you. Huma, great to meet you. I'm actually streaming to you from Los Angeles, so the other side of the day and the world from yourselves. But thank you very much, Wasim. And I'm happy to say that just a few minutes ago, I spoke with Mr. Wojcicki, who is one of the world's great iconic educators, who is going to be working with Wasim and his team to bring forth some very interesting in the next phase of education, where AI, VR, AR, some of the new disciplines are going to play an important role in helping education find space, and impact with young people and experienced people.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, looking at education, like what you're describing, can be very important for our future.
Very much so. It's critical, and those countries that are able to have to be flexible are the companies to watch. And there's a very interesting book, if you're interested, that's just recently come out, very well reviewed by The Economist and the Financial Times, called Economics, which gives very good guidance as to key lessons of how you pivot through disruption.
Well, thank you for the recommendation.
Well, this is going to get interesting. Huma, I'd love for you to do your introduction as well, and talk about a bit about what you do and how you and Telle, of course, connected, and we'll fly away with the conversation.
Yeah, I would love to talk about myself as well. I mean, there are several different aspects of my profile that I can bring forward, but in the context of this conversation, especially with Telle here, I'm also one of the women in technology. I've been working in tech for almost 15 years, and I started my tech journey in Pakistan, and I moved, navigated from Pakistan to the UK, where you live, Wasim, and then finally, here in the US, working in the tech industry for past 10 years. So I had my share of all the challenges, trying to find a sense of belonging and feeling very isolated in my personal journey in tech. And that's how I got connected with Dr. Telle Whitney, because I was one of the audience or one of the attendees of Grace Hopper, and I was trying to figure out, where do I go and find that belonging? And I found that in Grace Hopper. So as an extension of, what that inspiration that I got from Telle was to co-create and co-found an Anita Borg affiliated sister community called Pakistani Women in Computing. And Wasim, you can probably relate to the experiences, like having, being a Pakistani and being in tech and being a female. It just, the set of challenges that we all go through is just multi-fold. So that's my introduction. Like I co-founded PWIC. It's a nonprofit similar to Anita Borg Institute, and it's at the global scale. We have close to 5,000 community members and 13 global chapters, and we are just looking forward to help the Pakistani women to grow in technology. And a huge part of that inspiration, I would say, comes from Telle Whitney and She has been my personal mentor as well. I've always reached out to her, and I'm so, it's so wonderful to see that, she's so approachable, she's so humble, and I'm very much inspired with what she has done. So thank you for inviting me to this conversation.
No, thank you for joining and being the co-host. So I want to go with this. So Yuval Noah Harari said, in order to keep with the world of, in order to keep up with the world of 2050, you will not merely need to invent new ideas and products. You will above all need to reinvent yourself again and again. Telle, I'd love for your perspective on that statement, and then I would love to come to Ralph and Huma as well on your thoughts.
Well, all the people that I admire reinvent themselves. I mean, for me, I was a student first. I started in a research lab. I worked in semiconductors for many years, and then I reinvented myself by leading a nonprofit. And right now, I'm in the process of reinventing myself to have an impact that I so choose on women who are creating technology. One of my most important mentors was my PhD thesis advisor named Carver Mead, and I watch him change fields every 10 years or so, and to always be looking to the future. So I certainly believe that all of us need to continue to reinvent themselves and to stay focused on what's most important to us.
Wow, that's amazing. Ralph, I'd love for you to follow up then. You heard what Telle had to say about consistently reinventing ourselves. What do you think?
I think that's really important. There was a recent amazing interview by a New York Times writer called Ezra Klein, Klein, where he was interviewing Noam Chomsky, the famous thinker who at 92 talked about how ideas matter and the importance of changing and always being able to change your thinking and opinion and in a sense. And it also reminds me of the Nobel Women's Institute, which is the gathering of all of the Nobel female Peace Prize winners that actually based in Ottawa in Canada, but as a group of women particularly focused on developing and enhancing and improving the lives of women. Also believe that you, Telle, had just voiced. This whole notion in the modern world of being able to pivot quickly is really vital and important. And just not keep hold of ideas that may have been developed in the 90s or the 2000s. We now are moving at a much faster pace in an attention, and obviously to be able to get good ideas that are woven into good educational outcomes is, I think, one of the key priorities of not just government, but foundations, non-profits, and certainly in enhancing young people's lives.
Absolutely, and I agree. I think this next decade, none of us can really predict what things are going to look like. What we can do is have the ability to consistently being in a place where we can prepare ourselves to adapt to what are coming along. I'd love for your thoughts as well on the same statement, and you've heard what Ralph said and you've heard what Telle said. What's your perspective?
I had to reinvent myself or relaunch myself several different times. During all the between moving countries, and I've already switched like multiple companies and also like a number of careers within tech. So initially, I was very uncomfortable with the idea of change. Like you constantly have to go and reprove yourself, relaunch yourself. But I think now I have created a framework for myself, which is, and I really enjoy where you go and you challenge yourself, you challenge your thinking, you challenge the way you work, and your and there is a consistent growth. What I see in the next 50 years, I think that things are going to get faster, simpler, and if we look for impact, that's where I think I'll put my focus on, to see how quickly we can achieve results and how simplify, we can bring those solutions to some of the problems that we are facing at global scale.
Teddy, going on that then, with the work you've done for and with the Anita Borg Institute and all the impact you've had, what do you think of the statement non-for-profit? Should we be using that word, especially with all the impact you have?
Well, that's a great question. And I mean, there's nothing, the work of the Anita Borg Institute was very focused on making a difference in people's lives. And we worked with these, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of women. But I do think that the distinction sometimes between not-for-profit, for-profit, big corporations isn't necessarily that important. I see many for-profit companies that are very focused on having impact. What for us, I mean, during the time that I led the organization, what it allowed us to do was to focus on making a difference with people without having to follow the standard for-profit practices. But I mean, I think that you can model those kinds of organizations in many different ways. And this is another place where we need to be innovative in the way that we think about creating different communities and different organizations to have the kind of impact that we want.
And to follow up on that then, we look at non-for-profits and the first thing we think is fundraising, money, donors. And then as time has gone on, there are so many ways of looking at this now. Oh, we could use Facebook to fundraise. We could use this technology to fundraise. But you doing this for the time and length you've done it and successfully doing it, from turning it into something that was struggling, that's now generating such a fantastic revenue. What do you think the fundamentals are for impact organizations, and what does it take to get people and donors involved? It's like, what is that magical soup that you created to get all these people to support everything you've done?
One of the great things that I love right now is that I'm working with a lot of other, and they're mostly nonprofits, about how they can make a difference. Here's the thing, is that if you look at organizations that want to have impact, there's so many people who want to make a difference in the world, but you need to have business fundamentals. You need to understand that you have to have the funding in order to be able to turn that into impact. And the only way that you can have funding is if the people who you're talking to feel like you are providing them with something that they want to do. And this can come in many different ways. I mean, for us, most of our funding came from corporations. And so it was very important that we put together a proposal for them that spoke to what they were looking at, that was important to them. And then most of that case, it was recruiting. They really were interested in recruiting a more diverse set of technologists. But I've seen other organizations, and like you said, you can do fundraising online. But once again, you need to be able to talk to the people who are giving you money and that they feel like they're getting something from it. You can have individual donors. I mean, so it's always going back to the fundamentals, but it can look many different ways, and does.
Wasim, if I may add something here, there's a term that I recently learned. It's called sustainable philanthropy. So do whatever you want to achieve, but then your philanthropy efforts also need to be sustainable. So there's a stream of money or finances that needs to come in so you can continue driving your mission. And that's something that that we maybe when we run nonprofits, that's something that we do not realize that in many cases nonprofits also work in a very similar way. And the second question I actually have for Dr. Whitney is, recently we have seen a growth in several different STEM, women in STEM communities. Like every single day I find a new conference and a new community, and there's so many different initiatives in the industry. Do you see that as a growth? Do you see that as as an industry we have grown, that now there's so many initiatives running that are focused on helping women in STEM to grow?
Great question. I will say that even from my earliest days at Anita Borg, there were always new organizations that were being created. And some of them came alive and then didn't stick around for long. Some of them grew. I mean, Girls Who Code, for example, grew very large. And its impact grew. Right now, I see that same sort of growth in women in technology. I mean, I'm talking to women in big data, for example. And these are specialty organizations that help technologists, but in a very specific area. And I mean, I think it's great that such organizations exist. They will grow and they will thrive if they end up providing value to their members. And so some of them will grow and some of them won't. But overall, I think it's a good thing. I mean, look at the work that you've done with Pakistani women in computing.
Ralph, you've been working with a number of non-profits and you've been doing some influential stuff over the years. Where do you see corporations and non-for-profits really coming together over the next 5 to 10 years and that partnership? Because surely no one can do it alone.
To be honest with you, I can never look beyond Delta because I think 5 to 10 years is always very difficult. If you think that Google was founded a mere 22 years ago, and just think of how much has changed just with what Google has wrought in the world, it's difficult to say. But certainly in terms of the post-COVID recovery period that we're moving into, there is a range of new learnings that have to be brought in to bear. One, of course, is a far greater participation by women across all aspects of the economy. Secondly, for people to be able to have a much better understanding of data implementation. That doesn't mean to say that they have to be Lucasian mathematicians, but it is important to just understand how data can be utilized in a range of modern everyday requirements for business, for commerce, for education, for the role of women, absolutely fundamental. So all of these things are going to be given some new kind of shades in this post period. It's interesting too, just being here in California for the last couple of days, seeing the changes that are going on in the commercial marketplace, where the notion of working from home has brought the following, which is quite an interesting observation. It appears that men are much more interested in getting back full-time into the office than women here in California. They say that they need to have that kind of camaraderie and idea mixing to be able to have innovation working and developing. And we're much happier to be at home 5 days a week if necessary. But the other thing that has come about is a new thinking with some of the large tech companies that people should be in the office for 1 to 2 days a week, because you need to have that kind of community interaction for ideas and innovation ricochets to materialize. So those are just some initial thoughts, and obviously post-COVID with new thinking, new products. If the world-saving vaccines were developed in a 15-month period or thereabouts, which would normally have taken 10 to 15 years, this is just a small snapshot of some of the speed that we've got to start thinking about development and idea generation.
Absolutely, to add on that, then I think this question comes in really nicely from Zeus. How can we use education to bridge the gap between different starting points for women working in technology all over the world? Terry, I'd love for you to comment on that, and then we can come to Huma and Ralph.
Well, over the last few months, I've ended up talking to a number of young women who are just starting out on their career. And I mean, first of all, understanding that many of women who start in technology is because of economic realities. They want to bring a decent salary home. But the good news about much technology is you don't necessarily need to have a computer science degree. I talked to one woman in the Bay Area who went to a coding camp. She spent 4 months at a coding camp. And from that, she was able to get an internship at a high-tech company. And she's now worked there for the last couple of years. And so I do think that there are many different approaches that allow women to enter the workplace. I have another colleague who has a graduate degree in computer science for non-computer science undergraduates, which once again takes a year to be able to provide women with well, it's not just women, but most of their students are women, to be able to develop the skills to get a world-class paying job. So I do think education can make a huge difference, and it comes in many diverse ways.
I agree. I think it's going to be a very interesting challenge for the reason also that how do we ensure that the ecosystems are prepared to deliver that environment where people can consistently adapt, and not just the women, even the men. Huma, what do you think on that question Zeus posed?
My thoughts on this particular question is, before we can use education to bridge the gap, I think the access to education is also very important, especially the countries that we come from, where having access to, or equal access to, education is a defining factor, where you can go and how far you can go. And with COVID, what we saw, and I do come from digital learning background as well, we also saw that while we were really thriving on the digital learning side of things, there was also digital divide, that not everyone has access to internet or to the devices or to the opportunities where they can educate. So I would say that the prime focus would be access, and once we provide equal opportunities for education, that's where I would also say education combined with exposure, because what we see in the industry is lack of experience, lack of exposure, and a lot of things. Even myself, like I learned because I pushed myself out there and I got myself exposed to new things, and that helped me grow and figure out which career paths I wanted to take. So I think access and exposure would be on top of education that I would go for.
Amazing.
Can I make just one additional comment? I mentioned AI for All, and this was a summer program that's at 18 universities, and many of the students were from low economic backgrounds. And all these years we've been able to bring these students to the campuses, but with the virtual learning, without broadband, many of the same students could not attend. And so I agree with equal access. And I think that if you look globally, that's also an issue.
Ralph, what do you think? Connectivity, giving people more access, is that one of the things we also need to solve?
Yes, I'll give you an example certainly from the UK that I think has got absolutely vital relevance. In the recent local election, which took place in the UK on the 6th of May, Andy Burnham was re-elected as the mayor of Manchester, very popular mayor of Manchester, with a 67.3% vote. His big issue for the next couple of years of his mayoral role is that he's brought in a British Olympic athlete by the name of Diana Nodal to basically oversee the connecting and the wireless connectivity of all of Manchester, particularly in the deprived and low economic areas, because Andy Burnham, as the mayor, believes that one of his key priorities for his mayoral role is to ensure that there is massive connectivity across all age groups, across all demographics, across all income earning or generating, because he wants to be able to develop Manchester and its surrounding areas in Greater Manchester as a great innovation and startup hub. But this has to be done right across the board. And Diane Modal is running a particular team that is looking at basically connecting young women, young people, showing them the value of being connected. It's an initiative that he's doing, and of course, he's really one of the important big thinkers in urban Britain today.
Wow, and then kind of adding on that, Aaron, I'm going to come to your comment as well. We talk about connectivity and technology. I have a dear friend called Jos who pioneered and set up a company called Binova.ai, and it's a tool that can essentially be used in corporations as well as in education, whereby it assesses where your gaps are in terms of your knowledge, and then pushes personalized content towards you. Really, you've talked about AI, and you're obviously on one of the boards or a number of the boards, and you're comfortable with it. How do you see that dynamic changing between education in terms of, you look at the teacher and you look at the student. If AI can come in and help plug those gaps, what do teachers do in this classroom?
Well, I mean, great teachers will be able to focus on what they do best, which is engaging with the students. You have to be careful with AI coming in to help, because right now the leadership of AI, the people who are developing that software that we want to use, is not very diverse. For example, it's less than 16% women. And so, I mean, there's been study after study where AI, recognizes the faces, for example, of white men much more frequently than other people. And if you're black or brown, you just don't, it just doesn't even work for you. So we have to be really careful about talking about AI coming in and taking over the teachers' jobs. But even if you were able to find a great AI program that works for all of your students, what the teacher does that a lot better than me is able to engage with the students and understand what they really need. And I would expect that will not change.
And then in that case, that's an interesting point, because when we look at technology and we think, technology is a great solution, I often think, well, technology is only as great as the people behind it, as you pointed out. And with you building organizations like the nonprofit, how did technology change the way you did things? So Aaron has put a comment out there. Great to see a thriving non-for-profit. It's quite the challenge from all sides: managing talent, marketing, doing the work, and offering top-notch benefits. Did you find technology helped kind of cater for some of those areas as you were building the Anita Borg Institute?
Well, so when I left Anita Borg, we were at over 60 people. And so it's much like the startups that I worked at in the past. I mean, you have to be able to find top-notch talent. You have to be able to have all the systems that you would need at a small business. It really is no different. It just, people were there because they believed in the mission. And that's probably the most important aspect of it. Yes, I mean, because it's important to have internal systems that were based on technology. It was important to Anita Borg, much like you see at any company, to be able to track your community, to be able to have the good benefits, to be able to incorporate standard technology. We had a CIO that actually looked at all the different systems, and I think it's really important.
You touched upon a key word there: community, and within any organization, for-profit or non-for-profit, or for impact, having your community is so important, especially with how hyper-connected we are. how does one go about finding their tribe? How did you know who your community was? Yes, you had a defined scope that you wanted to help women in technology, but as you've said yourself, it's not always even if you have a defined focus, it's not easy to build that community. How did you go about building that community?
Well, I mean, I remember the early days of Grace Hopper, where Anita and I, who both worked in technology, it was the first conference, and looking down at this stream of women and thinking, this is my tribe. So, I mean, I feel very blessed because I often had access to a large tribe of women through the Grace Hopper celebration. The reason that we grew so much at the Anita Borg Institute is because there were women all over the world, people like Huma, other people who came there because this was where their community was. And what we did was we provided ways so that smaller groups could get together. My last conference, there was 19,000 people at the conference. So of course, with a conference that big, it's harder to find your people, but you had smaller communities, Black women in computing, for example, that found ways to get together and to connect with people all over the country, if not all over the world.
And when you did those events and organizing these conferences, and obviously you've done a number of them, the initial kind of build up, it could be stressful. There's also that adrenaline rush. How did you always feel after you completed a conference?
After completing a conference, I always had to go and hide out for a few days. I mean, it's energizing. I had this great job where young women were coming up to me all day long and saying, this changed my life. I mean, what kind of job is that when you have people telling you that? But I mean, it's also, like you say, a big production. So at the end of the conference, climbing away and sitting in a hole and just relaxing was very important. And so, in fact, we'd always take a few days off and then we'd start again.
I when you talk about the Institute, and I know, Huma, we were talking about this earlier with the work you did with your organization. It becomes like a child. It's your baby. You nurtured it and you took it to where it is. And then when you decide to, I'm going to step down or maybe move away, how does that feel? How do you navigate that? Like all the work you put in, the sweat, the tears, the everything, and how do you feel once you kind of try to move away from that? Or is it like, and also, like, I know for myself, I'd be like, I'd find it difficult to completely detach. I'd be like, wait a minute, no, don't do this, because I know how much time and effort that might go wrong. Don't do it. Like, how do you, do you still feel that when you look at the organization? Do you feel, and you're like, actually, I need to get involved before they do something wrong, or how do you deal with that?
Well, so I know a lot about startups, and I know where my strengths are. And I was great at creating things from scratch, but we had reached a size where the needs of leadership were very different. I mean, the CEO that takes an organization from 28 million to 50 million has very different skills than the skills that, for me, from taking from 0 to 28 million. So intellectually, I knew that. I mean, I have an emotional connection to the organization, and Brenda, their new CEO, knows that I will do anything if asked. And she and I talk on a regular basis. But it also is a big job. And so, whereas sometimes I feel sad, I also enjoy the freedom to make different choices and to spend the time on the projects that I choose to do.
I've got friends actually texting me saying, Wasim, talk about the 0 to 28 million. Don't worry about the 28 to 50. You've got Kelly on the street, on the right now. So one of the questions I've been asked is, could you give us some of your bootstrap strategies that you had to utilize? Like one, so when you're starting out, you don't have the funds, but you need to get top people or top talent. How did you go about doing that? And then for when you did have to plan an event where you didn't have as much funding as you would have liked, how did you navigate that?
Oh, great questions. It's startup is always hard. We were very blessed because we had this board of very senior people who were passionate about what we were doing. And so early on, Rick Rashid from Microsoft, Greg Papadopoulos from Sun Microsystems, remember when Sun existed, and Wayne Johnson from HP, they gave us money to say, because we believe in you. So we had important support. And by the way, I see that trend in a lot of nonprofits that I am involved with, is that the key leaders have people who believe in them and can give them money during those early days. I'm also on the board of something called the Center for Minorities and People with Disabilities. And all the people who got very involved got there because of Valerie Taylor, who started the organization. So I do think that it's important to find those early supporters and that really believe in what you're doing. That allows you to get off the ground. In terms of the top talent, I mean, because of the mission, we were always able to attract people who, in many cases, were willing to take a pay cut to be able to do the work. And because they saw what they were doing was making a difference. And many of the people who worked for me have now gone on to other very senior roles. I mean, one of them is now CEO of Women in Product, for example. So I do think that it's, in those early days, it's important to find people who believe in what you're doing.
Ralph, find people who believe in what you're doing. Now, can I get you to cut all your paychecks and and get you working full time on multiple causes? Ralph, you're on a number of boards. How do you think boards should be empowering the leadership team to succeed in the mission of, and the vision of the organizations? Because you talk about boards and you think, there's sometimes this kind of can be some kind of an animosity between the board and the leadership team, and then how does one navigate that?
It depends upon what the company's mission is and what products or what services they are developing or the work that they are doing. I've always observed that good mentoring programs that give people work experience in a meaningful way, that can be linked into data, can be linked into some kind of tech, is a good thing to do. I know that this differs obviously from country to country, but certainly in North America, the mentorship system is something that has borne many benefits if it's managed correctly. It's interesting that certain companies are no longer referring to having a human relations or human resources department. It's now more about community, diversity, and culture. So rather than going to an HR department, you're going to a CCC department, because if you have knowledge of community, culture, and that is a way that you can then particularly tailor ways in which you can develop stimulus and opportunity for young people who then can maybe find a way or an avenue for their abilities. So I think we're in a fascinating area of flux, in the whole area of mentoring, training young people. Doesn't mean to say that you have to drop out of university or you don't need a degree. I'm a great believer in education, but certainly education in the modern world is going through some shades of differentiation.
Yeah, that's incredible. I agree. I think.
May I just stop you? I have to unfortunately hop off for a board meeting here in LA. So, ladies, Huma, and certainly to you, Telle, so wonderful to meet you. Wasim, thank you so much. I'm sorry that I have to leave this wonderful aggregation.
Well,
Lovely to meet you. Good
Lovely
luck with your board.
Yeah, same here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Huma, we're approaching that last stretch of this conversation. We're in the last 10, 12 minutes. So I'd love to come back to you with that same question that I asked Hilly in terms of, when you build that baby and you have to let go, how does it feel? You've got this team that's not taking over. How is it for you?
I would say that my experience was not very different from what Telle has mentioned. When you bring something to life, either it's a product or an idea or a community or an organization, you definitely have an association, and an emotional attachment. So for me, the decision was very personal. I wanted to see, how I would navigate that detachment, because and I was I was going for a career in product management, and just like you build a community, you also build product, and you get very associated and attached to those products. So I actually wanted to see how that growth looks like, and how you detach yourself from the mission and the vision of your organization and let it grow where it needed to go. So it was, as a founder, it was also a co-founder, it was also my, I thought it was my responsibility to make sure that when organization comes to a point where it needs a different set of leadership and different resources, and that can keep up with that growth. So I think that's where you think about the organization first and not about yourself. So not very different from what Telle has mentioned. And even just like, even today, I'm available, and I'm always ready to support the organization, and not just that organization. I do want to mention that there are several other community leaders that came forward. One of the examples is Nepali Women in Computing. They saw PWIC, doing all of these events, and they got inspired, and they have a very young leader who's leading that community. And I'm very glad that I was able to, support and help her in her journey. So yes, there's a level of emotional attachment, but as a founder or somebody you bring something to life, you should be able to let go and let other people take that growth forward. That's my learning lesson from that.
Attachments and letting go. I think no, that's fantastic. Both of you have put it so eloquently, and Zista has followed up with how important is it governments to play active roles in empowering young women and increasing access and exposure. I want to take that question and maybe frame it more in a different way. They say when you want to do anything for impact, Ellie, if you want to really get deep with your work, then you work with the communities. And if you really want to get wide, then you work with the government. And if you want to be speedy and you want to go with speed, then you go with the private sector. But if you really, really want to go far, you need all three. With all the great work you did, did you have a particular strategy to work with one group first, or did you always think that, I'm going to involve all three sectors?
Well, to some degree, we involved all three sectors, but our core business was working with companies, and so we had and communities. So we had both that were very prominent in the work that we did. There are places where government can play a unique role. One of the things that's happening in California right now is that there's a state rule that you have to have a woman on the boards, and so boards have not diversified, or they've resisted it, or they've paid lip service to it. And because of this new California law, we are starting to see some big changes. So that's an example of how government plays a unique role that you couldn't do otherwise. Same thing with funding for development programs that happen in the early years, high school, middle school. That's uniquely, the government is uniquely able to have an impact in those times. But I completely agree that without the community and without the private sector and without government, when they come together, it can be very powerful.
Huma, we know the experience we've had when you look at countries like Pakistan. What do you think?
I absolutely agree that we need a combination of all three. There was definitely there's a fourth entity that I'll add to the mix, and that was reaching out to other communities who are either in the similar, in the space that you're operating, or have some alignment with your vision. And that's where you can really create that impact by, creating programs or, that are win-win for everyone. So I would say government, communities, corporation, and other communities that you can reach out to.
Amazing. So we're in that last stretch now. Telle, after all the great work you've done with the Institute and all the other great initiatives you've taken, it seems that you've still got a lot more that you want to do and give. So what's next for you?
Well, right now I'm really enjoying working with a lot of different organizations. I've mentioned a few of them. I'm on the board, but I do feel like I'm in a particularly unique role where I can help other people to have the success that they want. And I really love that, including my work with Huma. One of the things that I've enjoyed right now, I pivoted when COVID started, and I've been doing a lot of research on how to advocate for women and technology at organizations, and how do you do it differently? After seeing people struggle with this for so many years, I feel like there are places where people really are thriving. So I'm enjoying working with a number of different organizations, and as always, look forward to the future.
Amazing. And Huma, what about yourself? You're already doing so many things, but what would you like to see for women over the next whatever? As Ralph said, we can't even know what's going to happen in 5 years, but what would you like to see over the next few years?
I think I would like to see that we normalize having women in leadership position, women in tech. This should be, shouldn't be an exception. It should be a norm, especially countries that are still on the path. So I would like to see more participation, and I would also extend that, something that Dr. Telle Whitney mentioned in our last conversation. And diversity is not just having more women in the company. It's just having diverse set of voices that can contribute to your, when you're building, when you're driving innovation and building products. So I think right now with this, recent wave around or awareness around social injustices, I would like to see not just women, but other, aspects of diversity coming to, to tech and in other areas as well. So I think for me, it's like opportunities for all and for everyone is where I would like to see us going in the next decade, I would say.
So with that, Telle, I'd love for you to have the last words. Firstly, if someone wanted to reach out to you, do you feel you have the capacity whereby they for any organizational work that they could use help in, and what's the best way for them to contact you?
So the best way is I have a website, tellewhitney.com.org, so you can always go there, and through that website you can reach me. So I'm pretty easily available. I mean, people reach out to me all the time. I am very excited about this future as where we look forward, and I just imagine a future where technology is having a positive impact on all of our lives, and that there are all kinds of people across the board that are participating in that.
Well, Telle, we were gonna, as we say, start to wind down, but we've had as I said, we would have a surprise at some point, and Esther always pops up when you least think she'll be there. Esther, welcome. I'm so glad that Esther and Telle and Huma, you're all on the same stage. It seems I'm surrounded by powerful women, so I'm just going to shut up now and let you do what all three of you do. Esther, welcome.
Thank you. Sorry I'm so late. I had a million calls. It's just my life is not my own. So and so it's nice to meet you. Is it Telle? Is that
Telle? Yes.
Telle and Huma. Yes, that's
It's
great.
Really
lovely
awesome to
meet
have
you.
you. Yeah, nice to
Yes.
meet you too.
I've had, I think, at least one of your daughters on our main stage, and
Mhm.
I have talked to both of your daughters, and I admire greatly what you've done and your book.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yes, well, I'm trying to empower as many women around the world as I can. I'm on a mission. But it doesn't just have to be women, it's kids. Unfortunately, I think kids are probably the most, have the least powers these days. You know, they're controlled completely. And the internet has helped us control them even more. And so what I'm just trying to do is give kids an opportunity to be creative and think outside the box. And yes, and so Wasim is helping me. And I have this foundation called Global Moonshots in Education. And what I'm trying to do is help teachers be more effective. But, you know, this is in this pandemic, what a nightmare it is. You know, the teachers, they don't know what to do. And the parents are they're less supportive than they were before. And so whatever we can do to help, that would be great. And I'm happy to meet both of you. And this is a worldwide issue. It's not just in the English speaking world, it's all over the world.
I think it's great. I mean, giving access to education for all kids can have profound impact on our world. Absolutely.
Right. And there's a lot of ways we can do it. So I'm actually trying to do something like this in a refugee camp. Oh my God, I don't know if this is ever possible, but there's so many kids in the refugee camp. And what's going on is that they don't have internet. Of course, you know, like, what are you going to do without internet? And then Google stopped that Project Loon. You know, did you know that was the one that was supposed to bring internet everywhere? And so they said it doesn't work and we give up. But then they said that the satellites should be able to bring Wi-Fi. Anyway, I'm just kind of bouncing around out there. I'd love to be in touch with both of you and see what we could do to promote this. And I'm glad, Telle, that you had an opportunity to meet my daughters. Just so you know, they were both really stubborn little kids. And so stubborn little kids grow up to be stubborn, you know, adults who have grit. And that's what you want. And so, yeah, I had to compromise with them even when they were little. They were always had their own ideas. It's like, oh my God, what have I done?
Well, that's my experience is that I mean, a lot of people are very stubborn as kids. So,
but what we do is we teach them not to do that. And then unfortunately, what we do is then disempower them. And we don't mean to do it. We just want them to cooperate. But anyway, somehow or other, my children managed to grow up without having their stubbornness curtailed. They're, stubborn as can be. And I have 10 grandchildren and they're all the same. So I just thought I'd tell you, it could be a crisis. But it would be great to any kind of thing. We're looking for creators on this other platform I have called Tract. And with Tract, we're giving kids an opportunity to teach and to be influencers. And I think that's the first step. And we take them at age 16 to 25, and we teach them. So if you know of kids or in your community, kids that want to be creators, we also pay them, by the way. It's not just experience. And so I'd be happy to have you advertise that as a way to empower teenagers who might, I don't care what they want to teach about, anything, you know, they get to do it. So that's another possibility. It's tract.app, TRACT.app.
Okay, well, I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Huma, you were going to say something, did you?
Yeah, I was just saying that I had the honor and the opportunity to be in the audience once where Susan was, you know, at Grace Hopper, and I was so able to relate to some of the experiences that she mentioned while working at, you know, at YouTube. And then I don't know, Esther, but I was also in one of the, I had the opportunity to listen to you when you were a speaker at Open Silicon Valley. I was there as well. So it's just a coincidence. Wasim,
Yes, well,
this is like I think
very happy to find Wasim. It's a little gold mine there, and and so yeah, he's passionate about making these changes that I think will make a difference in the world, and I'm very happy to be working with him.
Oh, that's great.
That's great.
So we can set up another call. I didn't realize this was going to be so short, and I mean so small, but I would be happy to do another one with you guys when, I only found out about this at 9 o'clock this morning. So that's part of the problem. And I have a lot of calls and a lot of stuff that I'm doing with people around the world. And, as you probably know, I've been trying to do this for a long time. And so people reach out to me because they agree, but it can also take up a lot of time. So, but I'd be happy to do that with both of you. Anything that you're working on, I would be happy to help support you and whatever it is. And because I think the more of us that are working together, the better the chances that we're going to succeed.
Absolutely.
Well, we've had an hour, so what I'll do is we'll close this session, and if you ladies are okay for 2 minutes, we can just quickly catch up with all of you. I just want to thank everybody who was in the audience. We've had such a fantastic opportunity to learn from an amazing lady who has achieved so much, from growing an organization from its barest bones all the way to generating such a fantastic revenue, but most importantly, impacting over 750,000 people. Teddy, congratulations and thank you for everything you've done and achieved, and what you've done for women around the world, and what you're going to be continuing to do so. Huma, I am so grateful that you joined me on and you're co-hosting this. And Esther, for me, is phenomenal. I've had the pleasure of getting to know her, and she doesn't stop. In fact, she's super creative, super active. So with the audience, you've seen three powerhouses, and I think it really is a woman's decade. So for men, it's the perfect opportunity to collaborate and work with the women who are going to be moving us through some of the most complex problems. So thank you so much. I'd like to, again, thank the audience. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you decided to be here with us. So with that, stay safe, and would love to speak to you again soon. So good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.